Kesubos Daf is all about the sugya of how we certify the signatures on a shtar, on a document. We need to make sure that they aren't forged. It could be a claim of forgery against them. We have to be able to certify that these are indeed valid signatures. So the Gemara will talk about three sub-sugyas of certification. One is if a person is certifying his own signature. The next is if it's being certified by witnesses and he himself is gone. And the third is when it's being certified by judges who sat down and they investigated the signatures and certified it, and they themselves signed on the bottom of the document that they certified it, and later they have to testify to their own certification. How does that affect the entire certification and verification of the shtar itself? So by way of introduction, there's one central issue here that surrounds the sugya, and that's if a witness is certifying his own signature, what is he doing? Is he testifying to the signature that it's valid, or is he testifying to the content of the shtar? So let's say it's a shtar of a loan. It's a contract of a loan, and there are witnesses signed at the bottom that this loan really happened. Then one of the witnesses comes to court and he says, yes, that's my valid signature. So now he's testifying before the court that this is my signature, or is he testifying that the loan, he's standing here in court and he's saying, I signed to the fact that the loan happened because the loan really happened, and his central testimony is about the loan. Now there's a major difference between these two, because every piece of testimony requires two witnesses to establish it. If he's testifying to the loan, so then each signature of the two witnesses signed on the bottom of the document only have to be verified by they themselves, because they're not testifying to the validity of their signature, they're testifying to the loan. You have two people signed. If each one verifies his own signature, that's two people testifying to the loan, and therefore the loan is verified. If, however, they're testifying to the validity of their signature, and then we figure out on our own, once we've established that the signatures are valid and not forged, therefore those two signatures then go ahead and testify on the loan. But when a person comes and verifies his signature, he's testifying to the signature, then his own verification is not enough, because that's just one witness to the validity of the signature. You need to have another aide to come along with them and validate the signature. Could be the other signee, could be the other witness, or could be somebody else from the street, but you have to have two people verifying the signature. So the Gemara says, there's a machlokes between Rebbe and the Chachamim, which we've seen in our last Mishnah. How many people do you need to verify the signature of a witness if the witness himself is there? So Rebbe says you still need somebody else. The Chachamim say no, if he's verifying it himself, he's verifying his own signature, just he is enough, you don't need anybody else. So the Gemara says, so clearly the machlokes is about this topic. Rebbe says you need to have someone else to verify it, because Rebbe holds that they're testifying to the validity of the signature, so you need two people to say that it's a valid signature. The Chachamim say no, they're testifying to the content of the shtar, they're testifying to the loan that happened, and therefore the two people that are signed on the shtar, if each one is verified by themselves, they are testifying to the validity of the loan, and that's all you need. Says the Gemara, this is obvious that that's machlokes is based on what are you telling me? The Gemara says, I'm telling you that it's not a suffix. Each one, particularly Rebbe, who's machmir, is not just being machmir l'chumra, and that he's not sure what the halacha is, he's 100% sure. And this is important because there's a situation in which it's flipped. Rebbe here, in our case, is being machmir to say you need another witness to testify along with the person who's validating his own signature. However, there's a case in which Rebbe is more lenient, and the chachamim are the chumra, and we need to show you that Rebbe will still go leniently there because he holds that the verification is on the signature and not on the content of the shtar. What's that situation? When does Rebbe come out as a leniency? So the Gemara says that situation is where one of the witnesses has died, he's gone, and the other witness says, I can verify that person's signature. I can verify my signature and the signature of the other person. The problem here would be as follows. The Chachamim, who hold that the witnesses that are verifying their own signature are testifying to the content of the shtar, to the existence of the loan, they would say that you cannot have one witness testifying to the validity of the other witness. And the reason is because then what he's doing is he's testifying to 3/4 of the content of the testimony of the shtar, and he can only do half. On his own testimony, he's validating it himself. No one else needs to help him. Even if someone else comes and says, I also say that that's his signature, that's irrelevant. You're not even listening to him. The person who testified to the validity of his own signature is testifying that his signature is real and the loan really happened, and he's one aid establishing the fact that the loan really existed. Now the other aid's gone, so you need to testify that his signature is valid. Yet he's not around to testify to his own, so you're going to have two witnesses testify to his signature. As if it's not him himself, you definitely need two people, because these two people aren't going to be saying the testimony to the shtar. Even the Chachamim agree, if it's not the person himself, it's not the witness himself, it's going to be two people testifying to the signature. Now, the other aid can't be one of those two, because then he's testifying to 3/4 of the shtar. He's testifying half of the witnesses required to say that the loan was really existed. That's his own testimony. Then when he testifies to half of the establishment of the validity of the other signature, he's now another 1/4 of the testimony on the shtar. He's half of the Edom who support the fact that the other signature was really valid. He can't testify to 3/4 of it. Therefore, he can't be involved. You'll have to get two other people to testify to the validity of the signature of the witness who's gone and is not here any longer. Now, that's what the Chachamim would hold. If Rebbe wasn't sure which way to go, so Rebbe would have to go l'chumra over here. And we'd have to say that if one of the witnesses is gone, you're going to need to have a different aid come. You'll have to have someone else testify to the validity of the other signature, not this person himself. Now, if this person wants to testify, he can, but only if he's sure that his testimony is on the signatures and not on the content of the shtar. Because he's not sure, at least according to what we're trying to show is not true, because if he would not be sure, you would have to have two witnesses other than the one who's here testifying on the validity of the signature of the other. Says the Gemara, my chiddush is that that's not true. Rebbe is sure, and he goes l'chumra and l'kula, and he would say that this person is enough to testify on both signatures. He could testify on his and on the other one, and there's no issue. And the reason is because he's most definitely testifying on the validity of the signatures, not on the content of the shtar. So even on his own signature, he's only testifying to half. He can testify to half of the validity of the other signature, and somebody else, one other aid, not two, one other aid could come and testify to the validity of his signature and the other signature, and you only need one additional aid besides him, and that establishes the validity of the shtar itself. Okay, says the Gemara, that is the chiddush. Now the Gemara asks, according to the Chachamim, what are you going to do if you don't have someone else? You said that if one of the witnesses is gone, he died, you need to have two other witnesses, two people, to testify to his signature. You cannot have the one witness who is here testify to the validity of the signature of the witness who is gone. Or what if you don't have two people? What if you only have one? So Gemara says there's an eitzah. The solution would be as follows. You don't accept this person's, the witness who's here, you don't accept his testimony about his own signature at all. You tell him, sign on a piece of pottery shard, and we'll compare your signature that we know is yours because we just saw you sign it to the one that's written on the shtar, and we'll certify it on our own. Your testimony won't be involved. Then you can testify to the validity of the other signature. We'll get somebody else to come. We have one other person, and he'll testify to that signature as well. That way, you're only testifying to, right now, when you're coming here and you're testifying to the signature, you're only testifying to the other person's signature. You're not testifying to the validity of the shtar that you did a long time ago when you signed on it, and the signatures themselves do it, and therefore there isn't any issue with that. Now, what is the halacha in these cases? So Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, the halacha is like the Chachamim. The Gemara asks, obviously, Yachad v'Rav and Malacha v'Rav may always go to majority. Gemara says, no, there's a rule that the halacha is like Rebbe over his fellow. You may have think that's the halacha is like Rebbe over his fellows, plural, and therefore the Gemara comes to tell me, Rabbi Yehuda quotes Shmuel, who says that no, the halacha is only like Rebbe against one other Tana, not against multiple other Tanai. Now the Gemara has a kasha. The Gemara has three different versions as to who the one who asked this was. The Gemara gives a siman for it. Nach, nad, chad. It's either Rav Chinana bar Chia to Rav Yehuda, or Rav Huna bar Yehuda to Rav Yehuda, or Rav Chia bar Yehuda to Rav Yehuda. But the question is that Shmuel once did like Rebbe in a court when he was running a court, there was a shtar that came out that was verified by that court, and when a shtar is verified by a court, the judges who verified right at the bottom of the document, we, the undersigned, sat together in a group of 3 and we verified this. So there they wrote that it was verified in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe. They went and they had multiple edim for both signatures. They had the one who signed and someone else for each of the signatures. Why did he do that if you're telling me he holds like the Chachamim? So the Gemara said there the case was that it was a shtar for orphans, and Shmuel was extra concerned for their welfare. He wanted to make sure that they didn't get messed up. He was afraid it might possibly happen that they would take the document to a different court that ruled like the Chachamim incorrectly, and therefore they wouldn't be able to collect with it. In order to prevent that from happening, he went an extra step. That they ruled like Rebbe incorrectly, that is, in order to prevent that from happening, he went an extra step and was Mekayim the shtar. He verified the signatures even according to Rebbe's opinion so that they should be able to collect. The Gemara now moves on to its second sugya, which is, can you have a witness combined with a judge to verify the signature? So what happened is as follows. You have a shtar with 2 items signed on it, and then you have judges who sit down, a group of 3 in a court. They do whatever they have to do to verify the signatures. And the standard procedure is they write a note at the bottom of the document. We, as a court of 3, sat down and we verified the signatures on the shtar and they're certified. They sign and then the shtar goes back to whoever's holding it. It doesn't necessarily have to be used for a long time. Now, if the person who's holding it, let's say he's a lender, wants to collect from the borrower, he then takes the shtar, which is the note on the bottom that's been certified. He takes it to a different court and he says, here I have a verified shtar, I want to collect with it. And the borrower says, not only are the signatures of the witnesses forged, the signatures of the judges are forged, the whole thing's forged. So now you have to prove something. So the Gemara says they went and they looked for the witnesses, they looked for the judges. All they could find was one witness and one judge. The witness who signed on the shtar and the judge who signed on the verification. Can you have them combined? So the Gemara says, Yehuda Mishmul says, yeah, they can both combine. Now you have 2 witnesses. They're each certifying their own signature. The shtar is verified. Says Gemara, Rami Bar Chama said, that's great. That's a wonderful psak halacha. That's how great is this psak? Says Rava, not only is it not great, it's terrible because it's wrong. It doesn't make sense. They're not testifying to the same thing, and there is no established fact here. Everything that they are testifying to only has one aid, and therefore nothing's established. The judge is testifying the fact that we sat down and we established the signatures. Is that true? I don't know. I only have one aid who says that he did that. I only have one judge who says that, and that's only one witness who's testifying that that happened. So I can't establish that. On the other hand, as far as the witness who's testifying to his own signature, he is testifying to the existence of the loan, because we hold like the Chachamim halacha l'maisa, and a witness who testifies to the validity of his own signature is testifying to the loan. So he's testifying to the loan, and the judge is testifying to the validity of the signatures. They're not testifying to the same thing. Each one is only one witness, and neither is established. So the Gemara says, when Rami Bar Yecheskel came, he said, don't listen to these rules that are said by Yehuda, my brother, in the name of Shmuel, because this is not a correct halacha. Says the Gemara, though, that Rav Nai, the brother of Chia, Bar Abba, came to buy sesame seeds, and he said the same thing in the name of Shmuel. So the Gemara says that again, now Ameimar said this is a wonderful halacha. So Rav Ashi criticized Ameimar. He said, your grandfather, Rami Bar Chama, is your mother's father. He's the one who praised it the last time it was said. Now you're praising it because your grandfather did. But Rav already showed us that it's a wrong psak. Alright, the Gemara's third sugya is discussing what happens when you have 3 judges that are verifying a shtar, and 2 of them are able to verify it, and one of them doesn't really know. So we'll have a couple of different versions of how this plays out. So the Gemara first says, Safra said the name of Rabbi Abba, the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Shmuel, Bar Marta, the name of Rav Huna. Some say it was Rav Huna, the name of Rav. You have 3 people who sat down to form a court to verify a shtar. 2 of them recognize the signatures. They themselves are able to certify. The third one does not know. So the Gemara assumes they have to testify to him that he should also be aware of it, and then all 3 of them will know, and then they can write on it that we verify this, signed by the following 3 judges. Says the Gemara, they have to testify to him before they sign. Because if they first sign, then they're signing to something false. They're signing, we sat down here in a group of 3 and we verified it. That's not true. At the time that you were signing, there was no group of 3. Only 2 of you knew. The third one didn't know. So therefore they have to testify first and then sign after. The Gemara says, hold on a second. They shouldn't, not only can't they sign after, they not only can't they sign before they testify, they can't even write the note on the bottom of the document before they testify. Because we have halacha that if a court is verifying a shtar and they're expecting witnesses to come, this is a side case. None of the three know anything. They're expecting two witnesses to come and verify signatures. They cannot first write the note on the bottom of the shtar, then listen to the witnesses, and then sign. You can't write it before you are aware of it, because at that time it's not true. At the time that you're writing it, it's false. You're writing that we know of the fact that this shtar is true because two witnesses came and said so. It's not correct. You haven't heard anything yet. So you have to first hear the testimony, then write it and sign it. So therefore, in our case as well, it's got to be that the two witnesses, the two judges who know about the validity of the signatures, they have to first testify to the third, then all three of them know, then they can write, we sat together as a group of three, we verified, and we're signing. Okay, now, says the Gemara, we can learn three halachas based on this sugya. Halacha number 1 is that a judge can serve as a witness. He can both be a witness and a judge, because here you have two that are both testifying to the third and signing as a judge on their own. Okay, the Gemara accepts that clear proof. We see that halacha from here. Then the Gemara says two more halachas, which we challenge. Halacha number 1, that you don't have to testify in court. If the judges know the fact, you don't need testimony. The judges know it already. They could just do the court action without testimony before them. How do you see that? Because the two judges, they are able to sign based on what they knew. So you don't need any testimony to them. Now, that's understood here, and that seems to be what's happening. And then the third halacha is that if you have part of a court that knows and part of a court that doesn't know, you need to have testimony before everybody. Every member of the court has to hear proof. It's not enough if some of the court know and they tell the other one, all right, we know you could sign along with us. Each one has to hear proof separately. So the Gemara says, these last two I could challenge. How do you know that that's what's happening over here? How do you know that what's happening is that the two don't need to hear testimony, but the third needs testimony, and everybody needs to hear testimony? Maybe what's happening is that there's a rule. A court needs testimony. You cannot establish anything without testimony. Not everybody has to hear it, but testimony has to happen. So here, in this case, you have everything. There's a testimony, and it's been heard, but you really wouldn't need it to happen. So really, your two halachas that you're saying are both false. If the judges know you need testimony, here you had a testimony. You had it to the third one. And if there's one person who doesn't know, he doesn't have to hear testimony. But in this case, you had to have testimony in the court. Every court needs a testimony. So the third one heard it, but it wasn't really because of him. So the Gemara leaves that. The Gemara says, okay, we cannot conclude either way. All right. Now the Gemara says that Rav Abba was sitting and he was saying over the sugya of a judge being a witness as well. And he's saying it over to the Talmidim. And Rav Safra asked a kasha to Rabbi Abba. And he said, we have a case where it seems to be that it's not true. It seems to be that a judge cannot be a witness as well as a judge. What's that? So there's a brisa that talks about where the Sanhedrin sat together to be Mekadesh the Chodesh. They needed to have knowledge that there was a new moon so that they could say that the new month has begun. So the brisa over there says that if you have a group of 3 and they were sitting together and 2 of them saw the new moon and the other ones did not, so they have to testify. So what they should do is that they should get 2 other people to sit together with the third one who doesn't know. That way they form a court, and these 2 will be the witnesses. So Gemara says, why did they have to have 2 other people? Why can't they be both the witnesses and the judges? Let them say testimony, and the judges, they'll then turn around and be the judges, together with the third person. You have a court of 3, they could say, Mekadesh HaChodesh. So how could you tell me that an aid could be a dayan? So the Gemara says, I had the same question as well, said Rabbi Abba to Rav Safra, and he said, I spent a long time working on this. I asked it to Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta, and Rav Yitzchak asked Rav Huna asked Chia bar Rav, and Chia bar Rav asked Rav. And the answer was that this is Kiddush HaChodesh, that's testimony on a D'oraisa issue. D'oraisa issues, you can't have an aid be a judge. Verifying a document, that's their abundance there, that's okay that you could have it. All right, now the Gemara goes on to another similar case where you have three sitting together to judge, but then there are two witnesses who come and they say one of these guys is a puzzle. And the other two judges want to say, no, we know for a fact that he's not a puzzle. So could they say testimony, could we accept the testimony of two of the judges on the third one? So the Gemara, in a sense, it's an Eid Nasedayin. So the Gemara says, only if they didn't sign yet. If they signed already, then they're Negeya B'davar. They have an axe to grind here because they don't want to be signed together with a puzzle aid, together with a puzzle judge on a shtar. Therefore, they're not necessarily going to be telling the truth. However, before they signed, you could assume that they're saying the truth and everything's fine. So now the Gemara wants to know what kind of puzzle are we talking about. If there was testimony that he did a crime, that he stole, and these two say, no, we know he didn't, so then that wouldn't help prove that he was a kosher at all, because you would have two saying he stole something. These two are saying he didn't steal anything. 2 against 2, we would have to assume that he's a puzzle. So that wouldn't help. Elamai, you want to tell me that they're testifying that he's an Eved, something wrong with his yichus. He's a person who by his birth is a puzzle. So then why are they Negeya B'davar? Why is it look bad if they're signed together with him? He didn't do anything wrong. They didn't know that he was a puzzle. There's nothing bad about that. The Gemara says the case must be that there was testimony that he stole something, and they're saying testimony we know that he returned and he did tshuva. Therefore, they're not contradicting the first set of Eidim, and you could assume that the first is telling the truth, and they're telling the truth, and therefore he's a kosher to be a diet. However, it is a bit of a gnai, because if they didn't say their testimony that he was a kosher, they are signed together with a puzzle because of a crime.